What is going on, everybody? My name is Davis Yates, and today I'm going to be walking you through my top 10 tips on how to film great travel videos. So my family and I recently took a road trip from Wisconsin to Colorado. In the middle, we stopped in South Dakota for a day because we wanted to do some sightseeing. So while I was there, I pretty much spent every minute that I could just filming because I wanted to make a travel video. Travel videos are just a really great way to not only become a better cinematographer, but also just to get some cool content out there. So if you haven't already seen my latest travel video, check that out right now. I'll put it right here for you. If you've already seen that, then let's just keep rolling. So I'm really gonna try and pack a lot of value into this video because I'm not here to waste your time. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So the first tip that I want to share with you guys is to film as much as possible. I'm not saying to keep your camera recording the entire time, but what I am saying is that you need to get a lot more shots than you think. In the South Dakota travel video that I did, I shot 2 hours of content, and the final edit only came out to 3 minutes. That's about 2% of the entire 2 hours of content that I shot. And what that enabled me to do is use the cream of my crop in the edit. Since I had plenty of shots to choose from, I could be really picky about the ones that were worthy of the final edit. And that's a huge part of why it came out the way it did. So with that being said, just make sure that you're shooting enough clips. Be intentional with every shot because that is valuable SD card space that you're burning through for every second that you're recording, but just make sure that you have way more than you need because trust me, if you don't get enough footage, your final edit is going to look like crap, okay? So just take my word for this. The second tip I want to share with you is to plan your entire shoot. In the case of my travel video, we were only there for 24 hours, so I really had to make every second count that we had. And so in my case, I was just Googling all the landmarks that I wanted to make sure that I captured and planning out what time of the day that I would go to visit each location so that I could get the best lighting for each one. Now, if you can, it's ideal to plan even further ahead than one night in advance, but in our case, that's what I had to do because I didn't have any internet connectivity until we got there. If you can, the best times to shoot the most scenic locations are during golden hour, which is where the sun is lowest in the sky, meaning at sunrise and sunset. And everything in between, you kind of got to plan around where the sun is going to be in the sky. So for example, we woke up at 4:45 so that we could get to Mount Rushmore by sunrise. If we had slept in or gone to Mount Rushmore later in the day, there would have been a ton of tourists that we had to work around and the lighting wouldn't have been nearly as pretty. So in the evening, we blocked off between 6 and 7 p.m. so that we could go kayaking during golden hour, and that would give us the most cinematic lighting and the best lens flares for that activity. And then in between, we went hiking, which actually worked out well because I was still able to get some great kind of lens flares from the sun since I was pointing the camera up during certain angles, which kind of gave me those lens flares and replicated that golden hour look. So just make sure that you're scheduling the most scenic locations for golden hour and then planning all your downtime and other locations around that. The third tip that I want to share with you is to get a variety of shots. This means mixing up your focal lengths, your camera movements, all that stuff, because you want to have a variety of shots so that not the entire film is just the same kind of shot. In one of my first travel films, the big mistake that I made was not varying my focal length enough and having very similar camera movements in all of the shots. And what that led to was a lot of the same kind of shots throughout the edit. And that kind of caused things to be dull and boring after a little while. But it would have been so much better overall if I had taken the time to get different kinds of shots. A few close-ups, a few wide shots, mixing up all the camera movements. That's one other quick tip that I'll give you inside of this tip. It's just that you want to make sure that the camera is always moving. Never let it just be like rotating or panning because that can be really boring. Even if it is rotating and panning, make sure that you're like moving the camera through the scene always because it's just a lot more visually engaging and you're just gonna get a lot better shots out of it that way. The fourth tip I want to share with you guys is to make in-camera transitions. Now, I didn't actually come up with this myself. I got the idea from other YouTubers like Peter McKinnon, but essentially the idea is to use the camera to create transitions rather than just relying on a bunch of smooth zooms and transitions in post. So essentially what you want to do is get a lot of whip pans and tilts and all kinds of crazy movements of just the aesthetics of the environment. And then when you're cutting 2 clips in post, you can throw a little snippet of that whip pan on top of it, and that'll kind of hide the cut and the motion blur and just make things a little bit more interesting. You can also do things like physically rotating the camera out of a shot and then having another shot where you rotate the camera into it the same direction, and then you bring the 2 clips together and hide the cut and the motion blur. So there's a lot of different ways you can really get creative with it, but I'm just saying it's good to use your camera for transitions because it's one of the things that's really going to separate you. A lot of other filmmakers right now are just using a lot of trendy transitions and smooth zooms, and there's nothing wrong with those transitions. I think they look really cool, but at some point it's kind of like I think they're taking away some creativity from certain people's edits because everybody's just dragging and dropping smooth zoom presets onto their footage and it all just kind of looks the same. So by filming in-camera transitions, it's just a great way for you to stand out. It still looks fresh. It's just more unique than dragging and dropping some preset onto your footage. The fifth tip that I want to share with you is to get right up close to the action when you're filming stuff. It's much more immersive to have the camera up close and in the action as opposed to just far away and zoomed in where it feels like you're watching it from 50 feet away. Sometimes you might have to break this rule a little bit if you're filming wildlife but you don't want to get too close. But in general, it's just going to be a lot more immersive if you have the camera on a wider focal length and up close to the action. The sixth tip that I want to share with you is to create depth in your shots. Now this tip isn't really unique to just travel videos. It's really applicable to any type of cinematography, but I wanted to include it in this video because it really can take your shots to the next level. Creating depth in your images is really just about adding layers to your shot. So for example, in this shot, in the foreground I have these blades of grass, and in the middle ground I have the boats at the dock, and then in the background there's the trees and rest of the landscape. It's really just about adding more layers to your shot, and that's going to create more depth and dimension in your shots and just make them a lot more immersive. It also really helps to have a fast lens for this so you can get that nice bokeh and background blur. And kind of tying in from that, my seventh tip is to use an ND filter if possible. If you don't already know, an ND filter is basically a filter that you can put over the top of your lens that lets less light in. This is great if you want to open up your aperture really wide to get a shallower depth of field without overexposing, because you can just use the ND filter to cut down on the light that gets let into the sensor. If you can, I would really recommend going for a variable ND filter, because this is going to help a lot to minimize your equipment so that you can just focus on getting the shot and not hassling with constantly replacing your ND filters to get the right shot. You can just turn it and it's fixed. If you are interested in picking one up, my favorite ND filter at this point is the Tiffen variable filter. They have a bunch of different sizes. I'll leave a link either right here or in the description. But that's just my favorite ND filter right now. It's the one I used to film my South Dakota video. I've done a lot of research, and in my opinion, the Tiffen filter is just the best all-around option for vignetting, color cast, and sharpness. So if you are looking into one, I would definitely recommend checking out one of those. If you do use the links that I provide to purchase, there will be a small kickback to this channel, which obviously helps support me so I can keep making content for you guys like this. But at least you know the commission is coming to me and not some big corporation out there. So in summary, variable ND filters are great. You can keep a wide aperture without overexposing while still keeping your gear load light. So now moving on to tip number 8 here. Speaking of keeping your gear load light, tip number 8 is actually to keep your gear load light. In my experience, shooting travel films is a lot of really fast-paced shooting. You're trying to get the most shots that you can in the least amount of time so that you can quickly move on to the next location. And to do that, you have to keep your gear load light and organized. In my case, I actually just took my GH5 and my Sigma 18-35, and with a speed booster, I essentially had everything I needed to get a constant f2.4 aperture from a wide shot all the way to a telephoto shot, and I could fit it all in one small bag that I took with me on hikes and everything. The more you can consolidate your camera gear, the more nimble you'll be, and the better you'll be able to capture quick moments that you might have otherwise missed had you been fiddling with your camera gear or trying to change lenses. And that leads me right into tip number 9, which is to know your camera gear. You can't be sitting there fiddling with the menus in your camera trying to find a certain setting when you're missing a key moment that you're not capturing. This is why it's important to have a camera with good usability features so that you can focus on getting the shot. I've gotten to the point where I know what every button and every camera setting on my camera does, and that's really important if you don't want the technical side of filmmaking to get in the way of the creative side. So just keep that in mind and make sure that you're familiar with your camera and you can navigate it well. And finally, tip number 10 is to record audio. I think audio is probably one of the most overlooked things in most travel films. I'm guilty of this myself. In my first travel film that I ever made, I just let the music do all the talking in the soundtrack, but what that does is it just ends up making the whole video feel more empty. Having sound effects that tie in with the visuals you're seeing on the screen can really just bring the clips to life, and for the filmmakers who go that extra mile, they're the ones who are going to be separated from all the rest who just skip the audio. But one tip for getting the best audio that you can is to just record it while you're there. Anything you're filming, whether it's some grass blowing in the wind, sounds of the wilderness, water running, whatever the environment that your film is taking place in, if there's anything that makes noise in it, try and bring a recorder of some sort to capture that noise. You can also just find your sound effects on the internet. To be honest with you, I mixed 100% of my South Dakota film soundtrack in post just using sound effects, but the reason that I recommend recording them on set is because it took me so long to find all the right sound effects from the internet and then synchronize those to my film when I could have just gotten the organic sounds from the source that probably would have sounded more realistic anyways. Well folks, that's all the tips I got for you today, but I hope you got some value out of it. If you did, I would appreciate a like below, or if you have any other tips that you want to share, please leave those in the comments. If you know any filmmakers who would get some value out of this, I'd appreciate it if you share this video with them. And if you want to see more free content like this, subscribe below, because I am starting a YouTube channel all about filmmaking and that kind of stuff. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.